We apologize for the audio glitches that we were experiencing for the first couple of minutes, but we're glad to have you all here this afternoon with us. My name is Bryn Scipio, and this is Amy Kemp. We are both licensed therapists in Pennsylvania and recovery specialists. We're going to talk with you today about one very specific way to ensure healthy boundaries and emotional health during the holiday season.
Yeah. The holidays can bring up a lot for so many people, not just individuals that struggle with narcissistic abuse or gaslighting in their lives. And so we are coming together today to talk a little bit more about how you can have some safety and emotional regulation around the holidays with individuals who show up with narcissistic traits, and be prepared emotionally.
Today, we're going to offer you a very specific 3-phase guide on how to survive the holidays with someone who displays narcissistic traits. And one of the ways that Amy and I conceptualized this when we were planning for this event, because there's so many different avenues that you can go down, is we thought about the toxicity that's related to someone who has narcissistic traits or someone who meets the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. So we came up with 3 phases that really speak to and relate to when we have a toxic exposure. So phase 1, we identified as suiting up, which is a preparation phase. Phase 2 is how to deal with the exposure. And phase 3, which Amy created, the decontamination phase, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. And if you wanted to check out a tool that we created for you, you can go right to pezzy.com/survival guide and find that there. But we're going to help you work through this right now.
So the first part of it, like Bryn said, was suiting up and getting prepared. And that is really something that is probably the most crucial step in all of this, is thinking of, okay, how do I want to feel at the end of this holiday season? It's not, what do I need to avoid? It's not trying to manage around the narcissist, although that's a component, but figuring out, how do you actually want to feel? And setting that as your intention, it can then become your compass and guide you in what decision and what other preparations you need to make.
And I think that's so important, Amy, because there's a lot of factors that we can control in other people, right? We don't know how they're going to show up. So we really can't enter into a situation and say, well, if challenging, difficult, toxic person does X, then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But what if they do Y? What if they do A? What if they do B? So we really want to enter this into what's best for me. What do I have control over? And how can I protect myself and keep myself safe, regardless of who shows up, who doesn't show up, what they say, what they don't say, and all of that related to external people.
Yeah, that's great. I think that is crucial to surviving the holidays. I think for anybody, but especially when they are so much, there's drama and a lot of different variables with families with narcissistic traits. So one of the
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, like, one of the things that I like to talk with my clients about is having more of an understanding of how they feel in their body and noticing when they start to feel dysregulated. And then what are ways that they can start to ground themselves? So having that preparation ahead of time of, instead of in the moment when they might disassociate, how do I feel? When I get nervous, does my jaw get tight? Does my brow furrow? Do I clench my shoulders? Those kinds of understandings, and helping yourself or your clients understand how their body reacts to different kinds of triggers is I think step number 1, to then also bring in, okay, well, now that I know this, what other supports can I prepare for?
Right, because when you're in the moment, you're not able to really, I mean, it's ideal, but generally speaking, we're not really able to pause in the moment and say, okay, what's happening for me now, right? My palms are sweaty, my heart's racing, my face is flushed. I feel like I'm being disconnected from my body. So having that awareness in advance is like having a fire drill before the fire, right? So we really want to know, what does this look like? How are we feeling within our bodies? And many other things that we'll talk about in the suiting up phase as well.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point too of in the beginning, you said, you don't know exactly how somebody's going to show up, but having this understanding of, yeah, you have history with this person too. So you have some indication of maybe what to expect. And so knowing then how you respond to some of the ways that they show up, and then giving yourself that choice of, how do I actually want to negotiate or move through this challenge? What would bring me closer to that intention? of feeling good or feeling peaceful or not, or feeling more rested or satisfied through the holiday season.
Right.
So playing that tape through of, yeah, they're probably going to bring up, if I'm single, they're probably going to bring up these other very triggering topics, maybe about my job, my career, compare me to somebody. Um,
Any comment that doesn't make you feel good.
yeah. And it's like,
Really.
okay, how do I want to handle that? That'll keep me in my integrity of how I want to feel after, this time ends with this person.
Right, right. So what are some, so we have noticing within your body, right? And noticing what happens for you when you're faced with a toxic situation. That can be part of the preparation phase. What would be some other things you would suggest as far as the preparation phase and what that looks like and what people can really do to give themselves the best possible chance to reach their goal as to how they want to feel at the end of this exposure?
I think, one of the pieces is having space. So if you can get a hotel room or stay someplace different than where they might be, if you have to stay for an extended time. And
Mhm.
the other big one is like getting support. Are there people that you can connect with, either there where you are spending your holiday or maybe even virtually, texting, FaceTiming, connecting, letting people that care about you and support you know, hey, I'm going to need some extra time. I'm going to need some extra compassion.
Yeah,
Are ways to bring in some resources and build that connection.
yeah.
I'm curious, what are some things that you like to do with your clients in this capacity too?
One of the things I think that's most important is conservation of energy,
Mhm.
right? Because it's going to take so much out of you when you are in this exposure to toxicity type situation. So for some people, that really means not rushing from work to holiday shopping to dinner out with colleagues to right into this event or right into this exposure. It's really one of the things that I say to individuals that I work with is lay low and say no. So it's keeping yourself really grounded. So that's what I mean when I say lay low. Stay low to
Mhm.
the ground, keep your energy conserved because this is
Yeah.
going to take a lot out of you. And I think for individuals who unfortunately, are going through this for the first time, they don't understand necessarily how physically draining
Yeah.
it actually is.
Right.
So conservation of energy and being very aware of that. So don't, as best as possible. And I understand what's ideal is not what's always practical, but when you can really prepare yourself and say, okay, this is something that I'm going into. I'm really going to take care of myself. I'm
Yeah.
really going to do things that help boost my confidence, that help boost my self esteem, that conserve my energy. So when I go into this, that I'm able to share, not share, but I'm able to engage successfully in a way that feels best for me.
Yeah, for sure. Conserving energy. And I think, identifying, yeah, your nervous system is going to respond.
Mhm.
What's similar, our bodies respond the same way. So being aware and compassionate, like, yes, I'm going to get anxious, or yes, I'm going to get mad, or yes, I'm going to have this fight or flight response. And
Right.
then being able to notice that. And you have to have energy to be able to do that. So you can't be going in burned out to then get set on fire by by the situation
Yeah.
you're about to walk into.
Yeah.
So having that piece, I think that's a great piece of advice, Bren, for
Yeah.
sure, for
Role
sure.
playing, I think, is also something that can be really helpful and is useful for a lot of individuals, right? And so we're dancing this fine line between we know who they are and there's also new surprises that are always being pulled out and new things that we're always like, oh, didn't see that one coming, that one wasn't exactly matching the script. So role playing in a way that we're just having responses that are clear,
Mhm.
that don't engage any further conversation, that we can feel confident about and that we can feel good about. If we
Mhm.
are not practicing in a mirror with a therapist, with a trusted friend, these exact statements and these exact phrases in advance, we're going to be very hard pressed to use them in the moment when we're faced with that really challenging dynamic.
Yeah, that also is key, and it helps that self-regulation piece of when you're saying something really hard, you can say it and be regulated. This isn't something new and surprising. So yeah, practicing. Do you have any favorites that you like to offer to clients?
As far as role playing and what their comments can be, I mean,
Yeah.
so sometimes it's specific to the situation, but I really have them focused on comments that are not an attempt to get someone else to apologize or not an attempt to get someone else to change their behavior or to change their actions. Unfortunately, when we're kids and we engage in this, like, you need to apologize because you hurt someone's feelings, we expect that, oh, if I tell someone they've hurt me, that they're then going to take ownership for it and they're going
Right.
to apologize for it. That's not necessarily true with all individuals that we're going to encounter. So I really work with my clients on formulating situation or formulating responses where they can say things that have nothing to do with what the other person is going to say, is going to act like. We're not really putting all of our eggs in the basket of the other person. So sometimes it's things like, I don't like how that make me feel, or, we're not going to engage in that conversation, or I'm not comfortable talking about that, or I'm not able to attend, and just leaving
Mhm.
it at that, but not offering an apology, not offering an explanation, and certainly not making any replies or comments that are going to lead to the expectation that this other person's going to change their behavior or change how they say or approach you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that again, boundaries are not about controlling somebody else. They're about, setting that space, safe space for you.
Right. What about
Sometimes,
you? Are there some favorite things that you like to do with your clients to help them prepare?
yeah, I do. There's one that I enjoy because it's more of just sort of reflecting back without really giving too much of yourself away. So if somebody comes in with like a little narrative or even asks, deeper questions, like, oh, you put a lot of thought into that, and just reflecting back to them that they put a lot of thought in, like, and without really giving an answer.
Mhm.
Most of the time, then a narcissist might even go into talking about themselves. And yeah, I did too put a lot of thought into that, and go into why they put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah.
Or
Mhm.
then they might try to also triangulate, right? And bring somebody else in to be like, well, what do you think? And try to get someone else to get you to answer the question.
Yeah.
And that's where you can say, I haven't put much thought into that.
Right.
And kind of try to ease your way out of it without having to necessarily put yourself in a circumstance that may be confrontational.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of one of those easy ways at practicing those good reflective listening skills, and giving some space, because that's really what you're trying to do, is create space between you and your family. So
Or
coming,
whoever the
oh,
individual
yes,
is. Yeah.
whatever the other individual is, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, I'm probably not assuming incorrectly.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things, and I think this kind of goes into a little bit more about the exposure in the day of event, but certainly something that we can just have in our minds and plan for is, and as elementary as this may seem, but the bathroom.
Yes.
You are allowed to use the bathroom. You're allowed to take breaks. You're allowed to say, "Excuse me, I'll be right back," and go wherever you need to go. So I
Mhm.
think kind of in the suiting up and in the preparation phase, reminding yourself, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to use that as an excuse. I'm allowed to go in there and scroll social media for as long as I want. And, no one's going to
Mhm.
say anything. And if they do, it's really inappropriate. I don't have to respond to that.
Yeah. Yes. That space is so important. Run to the store, pick up, go get some more ice, take the dog for a walk. It gives your nervous system that break it desperately needs, from just the energy levels that may or may not be present, in the holiday season with a narcissistic person.
What are some other things you think when there's, so if we've done all this suiting up, we've done all this preparation with our body, letting our friends and family, our healthy friends
Mhm.
and family members know what's happening for us, thinking and role modeling appropriate responses and ones that demonstrate healthy boundaries. We've done all of that work. We've conserved our energy. We have all this plan, and now we're here.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, I can even feel my heart my heart rate increasing just a little bit as I'm saying that, because I understand what that looks like and that exposure, what that means for so many people. So our bathroom is certainly one excuse. What would be some other things, some very tangible things that we can do in the moment to help support how we want to feel at the end of all of this?
Yeah, so I think I love using different kinds of physical reminders, because when we're emotionally dysregulated, we're going to not be present. So having a visual or physical reminder. So when you set that intention of, I want to feel comfortable at the end of this, putting on maybe a piece of jewelry or a scarf or a bracelet or some sort of tangible object that you can then, when this starts to get compromised and you feel that jaw tighten, that's one of mine.
Mhm,
You can
mhm,
just sort of grab it or hold it and just sort of help
mhm.
yourself ground that way without having to necessarily escape or disassociate.
Yeah.
Just reminding yourself compassionately that this is a normal response to something that has been traumatic or stressful for you in the past, and allowing yourself to breathe through that. So it's one of those, again, physical things that you like to bring into a situation, which allow you to stay present, stay grounded, and move towards that intention.
Well, and we know too, Amy, that when it comes to trauma responses, that when we can engage in a measure of physical activity, that it helps really bridge the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which becomes greatly disconnected when there's a traumatic event or a perceived traumatic event. And I also think that coping skills that we can use in the moment to support self regulation
Mhm.
are the ones that are what I would like to call anytime, anywhere, any place coping skills, right? So, yoga is absolutely wonderful. And at the Christmas party, we're probably not going to break into certain yoga poses, right? Journaling, absolutely wonderful. Probably not going to whip that out on New Year's Day. So these are things, they are very innocuous, I guess you could say. No one's really going to know what you're doing. And it's going to feel very powerful for you at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of like the secret pact you make with yourself for self care. I
Yeah.
really, I love that, and reinforcing that compassion. The other thing too is noticing when your kindness threshold is at its end. I love that as well. When you start to notice that I can no longer be kind in the thoughts I'm having in my head,
Mm.
that might be an opportunity to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
go outside, do what you need to just get that space and break, to reconvene then when you can be more kind. But no, like, because then what happens, right? If we're not kind in our responses, then they become the issue. They'll
Right.
they'll be turned into what, not the issue that was presented, of course, but then they'll be gaslit or led to, well, it's your response. What's wrong with you? So if you can notice in yourself when you start to hit that kindness threshold, if there's no longer kind thoughts going through my head, whether it's for myself or for the people I'm with, then I should probably take that as a big clue to take a big break and get some space.
Yeah. Especially when the unkind thoughts are turning inward,
Yeah.
right? When we
Yeah.
start to almost enact or have certain beliefs that are coming from these toxic individuals in our lives, and now we're thinking about them as if they are true, right?
Hmm.
Why don't I have this certain job? Why don't I have this certain type of relationship? Why aren't I more like so and so? How come I don't look like this, or I don't behave like this, or I don't live in this certain place, right? Or I can't believe I was so stupid to believe X, Y, and Z, or, I thought this person would change. I mean, all of those beliefs and all those thoughts we can have that go inward, that's definitely a signal for a lot of individuals. And unfortunately, I think it's also something for people in recovery from narcissistic relationships. That's a work in progress,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is to really deprogram your brain, right? To
Mhm.
decontaminate as far as all of the harmful and inappropriate and mixed messages that you've received as a result of being in a relationship with this person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. So well said, Bryn. Thank you for saying that, because it is a one of the long tethers that seems to linger for a while in
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah. Not knowing what's normal and blaming everything on yourself. So,
Yeah, internalizing that for sure, for
yeah.
sure. Are there any other things that you think that would be important to mention for kind of, when you're in that environment?
I think that if you decide to go, and we can address that in a little bit, decide whether to go or not to go. But if you decide to go to an event, going late, leaving early, absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
I think utilizing those friends and family that we talked about in the preparation phase, have someone call you, have someone text you, have someone check in with you every hour, every 45 minutes to see how you're doing to help you regulate. Certainly use the bathroom, certainly offer to do something that's really going to limit your engagement with other people, whether it's go out and get the ice, do the dishes, take out the trash. No one's going to care how long you're doing those things for. So I think those can be also really helpful techniques in the moment to help survive this toxic exposure.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great idea. Really good stuff to help people, again, contain, push away, not have that exposure really sink deeply into their skin. Of course, this
Yeah.
is going to be a process. Gonna
Yeah.
be a process. And I think it's just enacting any of the planning that you did in that first phase of, okay, yeah, I'm driving separate. I'm I booked a hotel room.
Going somewhere else.
I'm gonna, do these other things that'll help me go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
where I'm gonna wear this specific scarf that I feel really comfortable with. Um, yeah, all those things that we just mentioned, really, this is the time to enact the plan. But I also really want to offer this to people. Be compassionate if you also deviate from the plan. Like, don't beat yourself up if you forget to ground yourself with the scarf, or forget
Yeah.
the kindness threshold. Like, that it's going to happen, and this is just another opportunity for you to practice different skills, and that sometimes means they work and sometimes it means they don't. And just that self-compassion is really, really important.
Yeah, and there's a reason why we really are sharing so many different skills to create in the preparation phase, because sometimes not all of them are going to apply, or sometimes you'll forget half of them, or sometimes you'll only be able to use one of them. But if we only give you one tool and that's not going to work for you in that situation, then that's not helpful at all, right? So we give you a whole bunch and then you figure out what works. Maybe you remember one, maybe you remember two, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. So after the holidays are over, the phase of decontamination, it just feels like it fits.
Yeah, I just
Our
picture, like,
nervous
a
system,
hosing down of
right,
right,
right.
yeah,
So the nervous
like,
system's like,
get it
here,
off me.
gotta weave it in,
Yeah,
back into, de-thawing from what you had to hold together for so long.
right.
Um, what are some things that you want to, mention with the decontamination phase?
I think it's honestly very similar to the preparation phase in that again, that conservation of energy. So you are going to be most likely absolutely exhausted, right? Your nervous system has been put into overdrive. You've been using a lot of skills. You've been challenged with a lot of situations. And so, really, if you had the opportunity to, let's say, if the event happens on New Year's Day, which happens to be on a Saturday this year, you may feel terrible Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. This may linger. Another thing I think that's important to recognize in terms of your body's physical response to this is that your body will exhale when it understands safety, right? When it believes that there's no longer a threat. So that may not happen the next day. That may happen several days, a week, 2 weeks later, where your body can finally go, oh, okay, I can relax, I can exhale, I can keep myself safe in this way. So don't be surprised if you say, oh, I actually feel pretty good about that. And I feel pretty good after that. And then if
Mhm.
several days later you feel exhausted, or you develop a cold, or you're feeling very run down, or you start to spike a fever, that all of those are very common physical responses to what your body may be experiencing.
Mhm. Yeah, so the nervous system again does what it wants, and we just sort of have to follow it, at least until we have some other different skills. I guess, being that compassion itself, and recognizing, like, you will have a response of some kind,
Yeah.
whether it's sadness because it was a good time, it actually was maybe better than what you expected, and it was like, why
Yeah.
can't this always be this way?
Yeah.
Or why, or if there was some prickly moments, or should I have handled it better? Those kinds of things. Just recognizing how much you need to give your love and compassion to yourself, that this is normal to respond this way, and
Yeah.
having realistic expectations of how long you need to recover. Again,
Right.
you want to set how I want to feel. Oh, I want to feel good after, or I want to feel like accepting of myself, or compassion as the intention. Well, that might take some time even afterwards. So keep working towards that. You can get
Right.
there.
Right.
Um,
Right. These
spending
are building
time.
blocks.
Yeah, it's like, what else would be helpful? What else would be nourishing or nurturing to me? Maybe
Right.
spending time with friends, or um, being able to get some space. Again, that
Mhm.
space component, and limit the shame to your responses. Thinking of, oh, I shouldn't have said this, or there's enough shame and guilt that go on in these dynamics,
Yeah.
and making sure that you are really letting go of that, letting go of what isn't yours to hold, and affirming yourself that, yeah, this was really hard, and I did it, and I made it.
I was going to add to that too, and looking back over your preparation phase and your exposure and saying, what did I do well?
Mhm.
What is one thing that I can really feel good about?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
then we use that as our building block. Okay, here's one thing. Maybe I left when I wanted to leave. Maybe I used the bathroom more than I actually needed to as a means of getting that break. Maybe I did tell a very close and trusted friend to check in with me and I responded to them. Maybe I just actually prepared this time and thought about these things because normally I don't do that. So really use this decontamination phase as an opportunity to say, what did I do well? What's
Mhm.
one small tangible thing that I can absolutely, without a doubt, feel good about and use that as my building block and move on from there?
Yeah. I love that. Really love that. Again, I love that affirming and building off of your strengths. It's so important.
Now, there's a lot of questions that are coming through about, do we go or not? So
Yes.
everything that you and I are talking about is if you decide to go.
Mhm.
So what do we do? How do we help clients decide, do we go or not? Right? Like this is all great if we go, but what if we don't want to go? How do we decide? How do we make that decision? What would be some questions or some things that you think is important for people to consider?
Well, it's important to consider how you're going to be healthy about it. If you feel like it's something that you can manage well, like with COVID, we put a mask on and we do our, we plan, you're safe, we have distance, these kinds of plans are put in place and we can feel safe. Okay, I'm confident that I'll be safe. Well, if you're not, what is that going to do to you?
Right.
We take our physical health and safety so seriously. Well, what about our mental health? It's just the same. Our bodies and minds are the same. So, asking clients questions about, well, how do you want to feel afterwards? Is that even possible? Is that possible for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
If not, then we talk about how you can have that conversation to work through setting boundaries or limits that way. Or if they say, yeah, I can, then we work on the preparing the plan, and
Mhm.
figuring out ways to navigate that.
I
Think,
think something else that's important to consider too, Amy, is history.
mhm,
Right. So history repeats itself, as we all know, or as the common phrase goes, and really understanding that there's a history here. There's a reason why there's a history here. And it's probably because this person or these people or these individuals have not been able to see my side, hear my side, respect my boundaries. There's a saying going around about like boundaries are needed for people who don't have them. Right. If everyone got it, like we wouldn't have to work so hard at establishing these boundaries. So also understanding that whether you go for 20 minutes or whether you say you're not going to go or whether you go on a week's long vacation, there's going to be some backlash, right? There's going to probably
yep,
be some needling, some gaslighting, some shaming that occurs no matter what. Because when you're dealing with someone who has narcissistic traits or meets diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, this is what you get, right? One of the hallmarks of this personality disorder is the harm to others.
yep,
They're going to be mad no matter what,
hmm
right? They're going to engage in these tactics no matter what. So I think that's important too, is to understand and then make a decision from there. Okay, so this is what I'm getting no matter what. Can I go? Can I go in a short exposure? Can I go for a longer exposure? How am I feeling about myself? Or should I just stay home? Because this is going to happen no matter what.
I think that beautifully said. Beautifully said. If I could clap, I would. That was really well done. Yes, that history piece. It's that they're gonna feel how they feel,
Yeah,
and it's not up to you to maintain that. It's up to
right,
you to keep yourself safe.
right.
And
You're
so if
very
that means not going, that means not going.
yeah.
Um, I see another question too, about the question about guilt and guilt tripping and gaslighting for those that didn't are not going to go, and how to handle that conversation, after the holidays or maybe even during the holiday season. Do you have any suggestions or ideas about what that might look like?
I just go back to the things that we talked about earlier in terms of just saying, this is my decision.
Hmm.
I'm sorry you feel that way. This is what's healthiest for me. And then really trying to limit the opinions that you get back or the gaslighting that you get back or the guilt tripping because there will be, right?
Hmm.
So I would make it as short and as brief as possible. Again, not in any way to explain yourself. You do not have to explain yourself for any
Right.
reason at all whatsoever. You can say, not available this year.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
Right? And the questions in the comments will be, well, what are you doing instead? Where are you going? How are you spending your time? You don't want to see so and so. It could be their last Christmas. They never come around, right? All these reasons as to why you should go against yourself. And all you have to say is, I'm not available this year.
Yeah.
And
Because
that's it.
yeah, because somebody that genuinely cares or is concerned about you or loves you would say, oh, okay, well, I hope you take care of yourself. Let me know if you need
Right.
anything. When
Right.
that's not going to be obviously the response from somebody with narcissistic traits or personality disorder. So again, it's kind of just like use that as more fuel for your decision of if they
Mhm.
push back on that kind of a boundary, like, okay, yeah, this is reaffirming why I'm saying no, rather than
Right.
starting to internalize that self-doubt and recognizing the response for what it actually is. It's a way to
Right.
manipulate and control.
Yep. And I think that's a good point, Amy, that someone who does love you is going to say, okay, you don't have to explain. If there's anything that you need from me, please take care of yourself. I'm here whenever you need. Let me know. They're going to really respond to you with empathy, with love, with kindness,
Right.
not with defensiveness. You're wrong. Don't you care about me? Don't you care about us? Right. So I think
Mhm.
also understanding those differences too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was helpful for those that had
Yeah,
questions about that.
I hope it was too. Um, I don't see any other questions coming through.
Yeah, but we look forward to see all of you or some of you at the Narcissistic Abuse and Gaslighting Summit. Brennan and I are both presenting at that with a number of other great specialists in this field. So that's in January. So if you want to learn more about helping individuals in narcissistic abusive relationships and gaslighting relationships, please join us in January. And
That'd
thank
be
you
great.
so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
And
it
I
was
hope it
great.
was helpful for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, for sure. Take
All
care,
right.
everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.